Brian, there has been a concern and there has been a list making rounds that Sierra Leone is being listed on a proposed visa restriction list, which the U.S. might agree to. Is the U.S. Embassy aware of this list, or you've seen it?
So, first, let me be very clear. There are no visa restrictions on Sierra Leoneans. These operations are continuing as normal at the U.S. Embassy. People are free to use their visas that they may have to travel to the United States in accordance with the terms of those visas. The President, at the outset of the administration, made combating illegal migration to the United States his highest priority. As part of that, he asked the Department of State and our colleagues at the Department of Homeland Security to take a comprehensive look at our visas and immigration systems to make sure that we were doing everything possible to prevent illegal migration to the United States. And he asked us to prepare a report for him that included specific proposals as to what he might consider doing in order to further strengthen the security of our visa system.
Please subscribe to my new YouTube channel CLIN and hit the notification bell to be notified for new videos.
We talk about US programs in our salon, and also we point of discussion today could be the issue and the alleged proposed visa restrictions to Sierra Leone. Once again, good morning, Brian, and welcome to the program. Good morning, Salon.
Very good morning. A pleasure to be here.
Since we last hosted you, a lot has happened, and one of which is the change of guard in the US. New president, new policies. Africa is concerned, Sierra Leoneans are concerned, and one of these policies or the shifts in the US is the reduction of US programs overseas. Sierra Leoneans would like to know, we start on that note, what is the status of USAID programs in Sierra Leone?
So I think it's far too early to make a conclusion as to whether it will be a reduction in U.S. programs overseas. Certainly, as Secretary Rubio has said on more than one occasion, the United States will continue to be a global leader in the provision of foreign assistance. The aims of the Trump-Vance administration are to make sure that when we provide foreign assistance, that foreign assistance is supportive of our overall foreign policy towards the country, which is appropriate. They want to make sure that every dollar we spend ultimately supports overall goals that the administration has and is consistent with their policy vision, which is what any administration would do in the United States. And then third, they want to make sure that every dollar we spend is getting to the intended recipients. They are very concerned that in some cases, our overseas development programs have provided an excessive amount of money towards bureaucratic overhead, and that the benefits have not been reaching the intended people who we want the money to go to. So they're taking a comprehensive review of our foreign assistance programming with those three goals in mind. It will mean that there will be changes to some of the priorities that we engage in. We're close to the end of that initial review of the State Department and USAID programs. We've made some decisions about what will be continued, some decisions about specific projects that won't move forward. Here in Sierra Leone, I think it's important to underscore that the main projects that we're engaged in health support, the President's Malaria Initiative, the Emergency Plan for HIV/AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, our ongoing programming on global health security, we have been approved to continue mechanisms under each of those programs, and we will continue to invest in those areas here in Sierra Leone going forward. Now, we may change the implementing partners. We will probably reduce the number of implementing partners to make sure that more of the money gets to the beneficiaries. But overall, we will continue to be a significant player in supporting Sierra Leone's health system. As far as USAID goes, the administration has serious concerns about how USAID has been structured over the years. They have undertaken a comprehensive review of that organization. They intend to do some restructuring, but the contours of that restructuring have not yet been determined. So it's too early for me to be able to tell you exactly which agencies will be moving funding through in the future.
But when you look at the global initiative, or from the U.S. policy perspective, they've reduced funding to some of these programs, like the HIV programs. Does this in any way affect Sierra Leone?
So there's been no reduction to the funding here in Sierra Leone for HIV/AIDS programming.
Okay. Earlier we talked about the reason for the United States government is cutting down some of these supports is as a result of concerns you have. Let's look at some of the concerns that you have. What are these concerns the United States government have to a point that you are planning to cut down some of these aids?
So I wouldn't say, again, I'm not sure it's going to be a reduction in overall assistance. It's much too early to make that conclusion. What we are likely to do is to reduce the number of implementing partners that we have, because every time we use a new implementing partner, that means more bureaucracy, it means more money that doesn't go to the beneficiaries at the ground level. So we're likely to reduce the number of implementing partners, and there are some areas where the Trump-Vance administration does not believe we should be providing foreign assistance. For example, family planning is one of those areas that we will not be moving forward with in the future. That's because of the policy of the Trump-Vance administration. You will have seen we withdrew from the Paris Climate Change Agreement. So we are unlikely to be providing climate change financing in the future. That's because of our overall foreign policy approach in the new administration on those issues.
The United States government is also supporting the Presidential Initiative Malaria Program. What is the status of that program? Are you going to continue to support that program or not?
Yes, we are. The President's Malaria Initiative will continue. We have already been authorized to continue with the programming through 2 of the implementing partners under that program that support both the procurement of commodities for the country and the work on monitoring mosquito control efforts, providing the insecticide-treated nets, working with your entomological institute here. So that programming will continue under PMI.
Let's look at the implementation aspect of this program from the United States government point of view. Are you satisfied with the implementation aspect?
I would say we can always do better. I think in any development program we can always do better in terms of implementation. The President has challenged us to find ways that we can do better, that we can be more effective. We at the State Department take that challenge head on, and I'm confident that with the reforms that we're making, we will see more effective programs with more money getting to the beneficiaries.
Now, you earlier mentioned that the U.S. is still restructuring to see where they can spend or not. For Sierra Leone's perspective, after that restructuring, where do you think funding will be stopped? Or which programs do you think will suffer?
So it's much too early for me to make broad conclusions about what will happen at the end of those reforms. What I can say is that I'm very confident the programming that we have around certain areas of health is going to continue. I'm quite confident that we will continue to work very hard to promote private sector investment here in Sierra Leone and all of the various components of that through the U.S. government. The reality is that we still have to await decisions out of Washington before I can give you the full picture of what our assistance will look like. But I know there is commitment, at least in those 2 areas, which make up the vast majority of what we do here in Sierra Leone, to continue to move forward.
That takes me to one of your programs, that's the MCC. With this restructuring, what will happen to the MCC and what is the current status of it?
So the MCC compact was signed in September. That compact remains in force. There is no move at this time on the part of either the U.S. government or the government of Sierra Leone to pull out of that compact.
So even with the restructuring, you said the compact will still remain intact.
As of right now, the compact is intact, and we have no instructions, and we've taken no steps by the U.S. government to withdraw from it.
Would it be possible if there is restructuring for U.S. governments to touch that compact, because it has gone through the Senate.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into too much speculation. What I will say is that, as with every international agreement, there are clauses that allow either Sierra Leone or the United States to withdraw from the compact under certain terms and conditions. Neither side has expressed an interest in using those provisions at this time. So what may happen 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 12 months from now, I'm not going to get into speculation about that. What I can say is that as of right now, the compact is in force. Neither side has initiated any process to withdraw from
it. And you're optimistic about the implementation, so far as the ambassador?
So I think that the implementation on the MCC side, I believe we have very solid program designs. I believe that those designs benefit both Sierra Leone and the United States. I'm quite confident that as the compact is implemented, we will see significant economic benefits to both countries.
One of the objectives of the MCC compact is to support Sierra Leone in terms of restructuring the electricity problem. You've been in the country and you've seen the electricity challenge. Sierra Leoneans listening to you may want to know, how will the U.S. Embassy fast-track the process of implementation of the MCC project?
So the primary challenge with Sierra Leone's power sector right now, at this moment, is generation. The reality is that there is not enough power being generated on a consistent basis for the demand that Sierra Leone has. The MCC is not the short-term solution to that problem. It was never intended to be. The MCC is about long-term power sector development, long-term infrastructure. The immediate crisis is best solved in two ways. First, and this is where the United States can help, by bringing in more private sector power generation. And we're already looking at that, both in terms of emergency power generation that can come in through U.S. companies and through the fast-tracking of longer-term projects like Nant Energy. The second area, and I think we have to be very honest here, is that a large part of the problem is that EDSA has not been able to pay its bills to the private sector power generators. The reason EDSA cannot pay its bills is because institutions and individuals in Sierra Leone are not paying their bills to EDSA. That has to change. If we want to have reliable power in this country, those of us that are using and receiving EDSA power have to pay our bills. If that does not happen, we're not going to be able to attract private sector generators into the market, and we're going to continue to have this problem where power bills cannot be paid.
Okay, the program now, good morning. Salon, they listen to the U.S. Ambassador na Salon Brand David Hunt. They inside the program for can talk about the alleged visa restriction to Sierra Leone from the U.S. Government. But when they look at programs them with the U.S. government being done, the implement na Salon. Now when they look at the MCC, and the MCC was tied to the unity agreement on the implementation. How far has that implementation gone?
So the implementation on the Agreement for National Unity continues to move forward. I was very pleased that the government and the opposition finally agreed on the release of detainees last week and the week before. I think that's a major step forward and one that everyone has been pushing for really since the agreement was signed. I know that the steering committee for the implementation of the tripartite recommendations met yesterday and reviewed the status of where those recommendations are. We are making progress, both in terms of drafting legislation and drafting new regulations that will go into place for the electoral management bodies. So while the process is certainly a lengthy one, and it was always intended to be a lengthy one, I think that we are making the progress that's necessary for the Agreement for National Unity and the tripartite recommendations to be implemented in more than sufficient time for entry into force of the MCC compact, and more importantly, frankly, in time for the 2028 elections.
The United States served as one of the moral guarantors during the signing of the unity agreement. Are you satisfied with the implementation from both sides, the government and the opposition?
So we're not a moral guarantor. We were never a moral guarantor. That was left to the United Nations and international organizations. We've been a development partner and we've been supporting the agreement, but we're certainly not one of the formal moral guarantors that the two sides laid out. But as far as the agreement goes, I think both the government and the opposition remain committed to doing everything they can to implement the agreement. There are certainly areas in which both sides could pay enhanced attention, but I think rather than looking at what they're not doing, it's more important to look at what they have been able to achieve. And I believe that both the government and the opposition have made considerable strides in trying to live up to the agreement, to narrow the gap between the two parties, to build national unity, to move forward with election reforms for the people of Sierra Leone. So while one can easily sit on the outside and criticize and say, we wish you'd done that, we wish you'd done this, what I prefer to do is to look at where they have made progress and continue to encourage them to address the outstanding issues that need to be addressed.
Brian, there has been a concern and there has been a list making rounds that Sierra Leone is being listed on a proposed visa restriction list, which the U.S. might agree to. Is the U.S. Embassy aware of this list, or you've seen it?
So, first, let me be very clear. There are no visa restrictions on Sierra Leoneans. These operations are continuing as normal at the U.S. Embassy. People are free to use their visas that they may have to travel to the United States in accordance with the terms of those visas. The President, at the outset of the administration, made combating illegal migration to the United States his highest priority. As part of that, he asked the Department of State and our colleagues at the Department of Homeland Security to take a comprehensive look at our visas and immigration systems to make sure that we were doing everything possible to prevent illegal migration to the United States. And he asked us to prepare a report for him that included specific proposals as to what he might consider doing in order to further strengthen the security of our visa system. Those deliberations are ongoing. There are no policy proposals that have gone forward to the White House. There are no policy proposals that have been signed out by the Secretary of State. We are at the very early stages of what is a deliberative process. Now, in the course of the deliberative process in the United States, lots of proposals get put on the table. Lots of things get discussed at the working level. We believe in an open and free exchange of ideas, and we encourage people within our government service to think creatively about ideas that might go forward. But at this stage, nothing has been decided, nothing has been proposed, nothing is at a place for implementation. We are still in the very early stages of what is a deliberative process.
According to the New York Times, it is not an agreement yet. It has not been signed, but it's just an internal discussion, and the Sierra Leone is being proposed.
Well, look, I don't comment on the content of internal discussions within the U.S. bureaucracy, specifically because those aren't policy proposals. Those aren't policies. Those aren't things that have gone forward to decision makers and been signed off on by decision makers in our government. Lots of things get discussed that never see the light of day. So we don't talk about the content of internal deliberations. The only thing that I will say about the New York Times article is that if you look at the list in the New York Times and you look at the list that was in Reuters, those lists are not the same. So it's very clear just by the nature of the reporting that whoever thinks they know what's going on clearly does not have the full picture.
Now, New York Times is a very big newspaper in the US, and they have been writing such stories. Perhaps they have an insider. Have you cross-checked that?
So first, Reuters and the New York Times both publish stories, and the stories don't agree with one another. So whoever thinks they know what's going on clearly does not. I would encourage the people of Sierra Leone to get their information from the U.S. government, not from people who think they have sources somewhere who might know something, who might want to put out a good story, either to embarrass the U.S. administration, to cause problems between the United States and foreign countries. So I would simply say at this stage, there are no decisions, there is no visa restriction policy, there is no instructions to the embassy to impose such a policy. So I understand there's a lot of speculation in social media, but I would encourage people, if they have questions about whether visa operations are ongoing, whether they can use their visas to travel to the United States, both of which they can, they should look at the embassy website and to official sources of information, not reports of sources of sources of sources.
This was an information published on the New York Times, and also we understand it was an internal deliberation. Again, but you've already denied that there is no visa restriction on Sierra Leone. But one may want to ask if the United States government have concern on the visa process in Sierra Leone.
We have very serious concerns about Sierra Leoneans who misuse their visas when they go to the United States. 15% of Sierra Leoneans who travel on tourist and business visas overstay. 35% of those who travel on student visas remain illegally in the United States. This cannot continue. We need to see Sierra Leoneans using their visas in accordance with U.S. law. That means no overstays, that means no working on a tourist visa, that means adhering to the terms of the student visa. This is a top priority for the current U.S. administration. And we are going to need, if use of visas does not change, to look at the full range of options that are available to us to secure the visa process, because we cannot continue to see overstay rates of 15-35% from Sierra Leoneans. It's just not a sustainable situation. Just as Sierra Leone expects every U.S. citizen who comes here to use their visa appropriately, we expect every Sierra Leonean who goes to the United States to use their visa appropriately.
You've just given statistics of Sierra Leoneans you believe, according to you, that misuse their visas. This concern, let's look at the impact it has on both countries, especially on Sierra Leone.
So the reality is the impact is on the United States. Those people do not have a legal right to be present in the United States, full stop. We cannot continue to tolerate people violating our laws. We do not issue visas so that people can go and do things contrary to U.S. law. Visas are not a right. Visas are a privilege. We allow people to travel to the United States based on the fact that they tell us they are going for legitimate reasons that are permitted under our law. When they choose to stay and take jobs away from Americans and legal permanent residents, and those who have decided to follow the law and obtain immigration benefits legally, that's not fair. That's not right, and it damages our society.
When we hosted you the last time, there was a concern that people raised concern that most times when they go for visa interviews, they don't have the visas. And now perhaps it is maybe out of 200 they give 2. These concerns has been there. It seems as if the restriction is enforced.
Well, those aren't visa restrictions. Those are individual decisions that are made based upon the applications that are filed at the time. We do everything possible to ascertain whether or not what someone is telling us they plan to do in the United States is what they actually plan to do. We have a large number of Sierra Leoneans who apply for visas who have intentions of remaining in the United States. We do our very best not to issue visas to those people. And even with our best efforts, 15% of those are still overstaying. So I would say our visa decisions are spot on. There is going to continue to be a very high refusal rate for Sierra Leoneans applying for visas to the United States until such time as the overstay rate goes down.
How true is it that diplomatic passport holders, Sierra Leone's diplomatic passport holders, are now invited for an interview before visa is being issued?
Well, that depends upon the purpose of the travel. That depends upon the information that we receive from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There's never been a policy in place that diplomatic or official visa holders were absolutely exempt from an interview. There have always been cases where they are asked to come in because there are questions about the purpose of their travel, or they are traveling for personal reasons, or a host of other situations. So it's always situationally dependent. Clearly, when we can, and when we know that someone is a legitimate traveler for government business, we extend the courtesies of not doing an interview. But there are cases where diplomatic and official passport holders are traveling for non-government business, or are traveling for purported government business that we can't verify without having them come for an interview.
So they have to go?
Sometimes. It depends.
Now, let's look at the visa issues. Are you aware that there has been a huge backlog of immigrant visa applications, specifically IR and CR visas, waiting to be scheduled for an interview by the embassy? The embassy stopped with applications that were documentary qualification in December 2023. What is the reason for this huge backlog for over 1 year now, and what is the embassy doing about it?
So there's not a huge backlog. I don't know where that information comes from. We process immigrant visas when they are assigned to us by the National Visa Center, which handles the scheduling of such cases. The reality is there are a large number of Sierra Leoneans seeking immigrant visas. It's not possible to do all of those immigrant visas in a single day. And yes, oftentimes immigrant visas take multiple years to process because of the documentary requirements, and because we only allow so many people under each category of the immigrant visa to go every year.
You earlier talked about measures put in place to cut down the number of Sierra Leoneans overstaying in the United States. What are these measures that your government have put in place? Are we going to see any process of deportation?
So, in terms of Sierra Leoneans who are already illegally in the United States, President Trump has been very clear that we intend to deport every illegal immigrant who we can find who is in the United States right now. So if people from Sierra Leone are living illegally in the United States, they are absolutely subject to detention and deportation by our immigration services. I would strongly encourage those who are living illegally to depart now before they end up encountering folks from our immigration services, because the president is very serious about the need and the instruction to have every illegal immigrant leave the United States.
And I was meant to understand that there are a lot of transfer cases from other U.S. embassies to Freetown, U.S. embassy, for an immigrant visa. Due to these many transfers, Sierra Leone citizens are constrained in having on-time visa appointments scheduled for immigrants' visa interviews. What is the embassy doing in making sure that Sierra Leonean citizens stand out or are priority in scheduling visa interviews in Freetown?
So that's not how our system works. Any embassy can process any case for immigrant visas that the National Visa Center chooses to assign to them. Any nationality who is resident in Sierra Leone can request that their case be handled by the embassy here in Freetown. The National Visa Center does not put Sierra Leoneans at the top of the queue for processing here for immigrant visas. The way that they assign cases is based upon when they were received, when the documents were appropriately submitted, and where the applicant is resident and is asked to have their interview conducted.
Appointment has been one of the huge challenge of the U.S. Embassy at the U.S. Embassy recently, and it is rumored that a huge staff shortage has resulted to this at the U.S. Embassy. And the embassy was regarded as one of the fastest. Now it is being regarded as one of the slowest embassies in terms of scheduling interview for visas. What is the embassy doing, or how true are these concerns?
So the non-immigrant visa processing, which I think is what you're referring to, the number of case requests has gone up significantly because people from other places in Africa realized that our wait times were far lower than other places in West Africa and have started to apply for interviews here. Now, it's perfectly fine for people to apply for interviews at any U.S. embassy anywhere in the globe for a non-immigrant visa. We allow that, but because we are now getting significantly increased requests for interviews, the wait times are going to be longer at the embassy here. Our staffing has not increased or decreased. It remains the same as it always was. But when the volume of requests goes up, that means people are going to have to wait longer.
This one says, please, I am a DV winner 2025, but interview at the embassy has been going very slow, and it's only remaining 4 months to the end of the program. They have only interviewed few out of thousands, and it has become worrisome. Other embassies are performing tremendously, while Sierra Leone is very slow in scheduling interviews.
Well, first, I don't think Sierra Leone's wait times at the embassy here are much lower still than wait times in many other embassies in West Africa, both for immigrant and for non-immigrant visas. I can't comment on specific cases without knowing the details, because whether or not this individual's case will go forward and when it will go forward is dependent upon when he or she filed their paperwork, when the case was considered completed by the National Visa Center, and where they stand in the queue vis-a-vis other visa lottery winners and other categories of immigrant visas. So there's a lot that goes into these decisions that, without having the full case file, it's impossible to say why this particular case was delayed or not.
David Brian Hunt.
We take messages them inside the program Good Morning Saloon, and this one say thank you Radio Democracy for having the ambassador to clarify some of these issues that has been going on in social media. This now from Anthony Yanga.
This one say after the election, a lot of concerns from international institutions with regard those that involve election fraud. With regard the visa restriction, does it have any linkages with those that overstay?
This one from Patrick Mami say, will the restriction affect the DV lottery results for 2026?
This one said, thank you Radio Democracy for bringing the United States ambassador to the studio.
This one from Michael Asmoa.
Out that if people are just now filing their final paperwork with the MVC or haven't yet filed their paperwork in full with the National Visa Center, that there's going to be sufficient time left for them to be able to get a diversity visa lottery for this year. As far as the questions about the diversity visa lottery overall, let me be clear, there are no visa restrictions right now. So it would be there's nothing right now in place that would impact the issuance of diversity visas by the embassy, either in this cycle or in future cycles. Always subject to change, but as of right now, there's nothing there. In terms of the questions about whether or not we can release names of those who were affected by the visa restriction policy after the 2023 elections, no. By law, the United States cannot discuss individual decisions about eligibility or ineligibility for visas with anyone other than the individual who is affected.
And I think it's necessary to engage the consular department, because a whole lot of messages, whether from our 07798191 and our Facebook page, has to do with the DV issue. But this one from Mohammed S. Bangura on our Facebook page say, Ambassador Hunt, welcome to the limelight. Mr. Hunt, why do you fail to refund applicants who didn't get the visa, the US visa, from your embassy here in Sierra Leone? Don't you think that you are robbing off the ordinary citizens who applied for the visas? And what do you use the money which applicants wire to your embassy for visas? Regards, Okensu.
So there's an application fee that is applied by Congress, by law, to anyone who wishes to apply for a U.S. visa. That covers the cost of processing the application, of employing the consular staff that processes the application and that conducts the interview. It is not a fee for visa issuance. In some countries, there are separate reciprocal fees for the actual issuance of a non-immigrant visa. We do not have those between Sierra Leone and the United States. So what people are paying is a fee to apply for a visa. So as soon as you have applied for that visa, you have already received the benefit for which you paid, whether or not that visa is issued. There are no refunds because you did not qualify for the visa that you applied for, because those funds are used for the cost of reviewing your application and making the determination as to whether or not you are eligible.
After the 2023 election, the United States government issued that going to ban government officials or officials that involve in election fraud. What is the current state of that particular issue?
So that was issued by the Secretary of State. That remains in effect. So individuals who fall under the ineligibility that was listed there would remain ineligible to receive U.S. visas.
So the ban is not in effect?
It is still in effect. The restriction on those, the restriction is in place for those specific individuals.
Mr. Ambassador, this one says, if only the ambassador is aware of how slow the current DV 2025 interview schedule is at the Freetown Embassy, the hopes of Sierra Leoneans DV 2025 winners would be restored once again. Like I earlier said, we don't have time again in the studio, but it's recommended that the consular department or the embassy go through our Facebook page and look at the concerns of Sierra Leoneans that want a DV 2025. There are a lot of concerns. Nearly all the messages are directed at the issue and the